The only sound in my studio that night was the gentle hum of the hard drives and the soft whir of the air purifier. It had been my sanctuary for 7 years, a place where the sterile lines of corporate marketing met the messy reality of creation. I stared at the brand's new asset rollout plan, my half-empty mug of cold herbal tea resting on a pile of Pantone swatches. Line after line of bullet points scrolled across the screen, and then there it was, a new directive. Cloud sync mandatory. Bypass local redundancy. The words didn't scream, they didn't flinch. They just blinked twice and stared harder. If I was seeing this right, and I was, this new protocol would completely bypass the critical manual asset archive I'd built after the great data crash of 2018. The one that had quietly saved our last major seasonal collection without anyone ever knowing. It was the same system a new hire had called To Legacy, a man who once referred to a mood board as a vibe chart. God help us all. This wasn't paranoia. This was sabotage dressed in corporate speak. I clicked into the project schema, double-checking dependencies. No local backup trigger call. No hook to my encrypted external drive verification chain. The pipeline signature was approved, time-stamped, pushed live. I let out a slow, bitter laugh. Not the kind you make when you hear a good joke, but the kind you exhale when you realize the company-branded mug you're drinking from might be your goodbye gift. The culprit was easy to trace. Brett, our new VP of brand strategy. He'd been hired 3 months ago after a 4-slide pitch deck and a reference from someone's old college buddy. He called himself a creative optimizer. I'd seen him struggle to log into his own Adobe account twice in 1 week. His solution to everything was just push it to the cloud and we'll iterate. I, meanwhile, was the one who built the system, quietly, meticulously, over too many late nights and weekend sessions. I was the kind of creative lead who still ran dry runs on my archives because I didn't trust the automated sync alone. The kind who kept 3 different versions of rollback files just in case a vendor changed their API without warning. The kind who knew that when everything seems fine, it's probably already burning under the hood. I opened a new folder on my drive, not to fix the mess, not yet. I just wanted to see if anyone else had noticed the change. The new commits showed one author, Brett. The merge request was marked urgent brand hotfix. No comments, no peer review. I sat back, blinking at the fluorescent lights. This wasn't incompetence anymore. This was negligence, the dangerous kind. The kind that breaks companies and ruins careers. And I had one big problem. I was the only one who even knew it was happening. Because somewhere between last quarter's layoffs and the endless reorgs, I'd become invisible. A name on a Jira board, a Slack status that always read, focused. I could already hear it, the condescension, the brush-off. Patch it in the next sprint, Nora. Did you file a ticket? This isn't the hill to die on. I'd heard every corporate hymn in the gaslight gospel. But I didn't do drama. I did documentation. And unlike the executive team, I played the long game. The backup system I built wasn't just a folder of files, it was a dead man's switch, one I never told anyone how to activate. And now, I had to decide if I was going to pull it. The sun was starting to bleed into the office blinds. The backup wouldn't fire, not on its own, not after this new rollout. It was 6:42 a.m., and I'd been there all night, running permutations in my sandbox, injecting fake assets and corrupted variables like a digital sadist. Every single scenario ended the same way. No trigger, no archive, no fallback, just blank logs and a cheery little status message saying, "Deployment successful." I dug through my old notebooks, still scribbled in ink like some kind of pre-apocalyptic monk. Back in early 2018, after a weekend data infection had crawled through a subcontractor's VPN and nearly swallowed the design department whole, I had added one extra layer of protection, a manual trigger step in the asset flow. It was hidden, silent, and required physical access with my signature key file. Management never noticed. Of course they didn't, because the next all hands was about leveraging automation and AI. And while they bragged about productivity graphs, I built the only real insurance policy this company had ever owned. Now it was gone. Not technically. My files were still there, but the new deployment skipped them entirely. It was like bolting new tires to a car and forgetting to connect the brakes. By 8:12 a.m., I was in the VP's office. Brett was already halfway through a sad protein bar and scanning emails on his phone with the kind of detached arrogance only someone 3 weeks into a 6-figure salary could manage. "Hey, got a minute?" I asked, my voice calm but stretched tight at the seams. "Shoot," he said, not looking up. I took a breath. "I stayed late last night. Something's wrong with the new schema. There's no call to the backup trigger. If the update crashes, we won't have clean rollback points." He glanced up, blinked once, then looked back at his phone. "Didn't QA catch that?" I shook my head. "There's nothing to catch. It was a manual-only step. I never documented it because it was a failsafe. You remove that, and we're flying blind." That got his attention, barely. He put the phone down and leaned back in his $100 ergonomic chair like he was watching a commercial he didn't quite believe. "We've already demoed this for stakeholders," he said, waving vaguely toward the glass walls. "We're past the point of what-ifs." I felt something inside me coil. "Brett, if this goes live and something fails—" "Nora," he cut in, raising a palm like he was blessing me with ignorance. "We're streamlining legacy systems. That means cutting redundancies. If your backups were so important, they'd be in the CI/CD path, but they're not. So unless you've got a ticket from QA or DevSec, this is dead weight. Let it go." That phrase had been weaponized more times in my life than I could count. From managers, from boyfriends, from my own reflection some nights. But I didn't let things go. I debugged them. I rebuilt them. I owned them. I stood there for 3 more seconds, long enough to let my silence coat the air like paint primer. Then I turned and walked out. No slammed doors, no speeches, just quiet rage soaked into every step. Back at my desk, I opened up my terminal, pulled up the log files, and took screenshots of every broken chain, every bypassed hook. I wrote a private memo, not for them, but for me. Time-stamped, archived, and attached the memo to a ticket labeled Priority, Critical. I already knew what they'd do with it. They'd close it, disregard it, maybe even delete it. But that was fine, because I also attached something else. A hash key, one that only I could verify. One tied directly to the manual backup trigger sitting dormant on a server I'd hidden under a deliberately misnamed container, Temp Alpha Dustbin. I didn't need them to listen. I needed them to walk straight into the fire they'd built. And thanks to Brett's brilliance, that ignition switch was now live. By noon, I had every bit of proof lined up like bullets in a digital revolver. I wrote it all up, not in Slack, not in Confluence, not on some shared Google Doc that would mysteriously fail to load in a few weeks, but in a plain text file, signed, sealed, and time-stamped, sent straight to Ellen, the Senior Director of Creative Operations. She was one of the last human beings in the building who still respected root access and drank her coffee black. The subject was Urgent Deployment Risks, Backup Trigger Dependency, requesting 48H delay. No caps lock panic, no doomsday howling, just cold facts, test case logs, and an annotated flowchart with one blood-red arrow pointing at the exact junction where everything would go straight to hell. I didn't ask for miracles, just 48 hours, 2 days to test, patch, and reinstate the failsafe. I clicked send, leaned back, and watched the cursor blink in my terminal like a heartbeat on life support. At 12:14 p.m., I got the reply, but not from Ellen. It was from Brett's executive admin. One of those surgically polite messages that read like it had been passed through 6 layers of PR before being typed. Hi, Nora. Thanks for raising this concern. VP of Operations has reviewed this item and it's been deemed non-blocking for launch. Please refrain from escalating outside the chain of command without alignment. Moving forward, remember to route feedback through proper channels. Appreciate your focus. Warmly, Amanda. I reread the words, non-blocking, like they were a diagnosis for a terminal illness I wasn't allowed to treat. I scrolled down. My entire ticket had been closed in the deployment system. Status, not reproducible. Timestamp, 12:09 p.m., 5 minutes after my email was sent. I checked the access logs. No one had even viewed the attached test case folder. I stared at my screen until my vision doubled, then laughed just once. That low, feral laugh again, like a warning siren no one could hear but me. Undermining alignment. Remember your pay grade. You're too technical to be strategic. You need to work on your executive presence, whatever the hell that meant. I used to let those comments fester in my gut. Not anymore. Now I wore them like armor, because being underestimated was the last bit of leverage I had left. I didn't argue. I didn't rage. I just opened a new encrypted Notion board under my personal email. The title was Postmortem 7/23 Rollout Failure Predicted. I pasted every log, every screenshot, every version diff. I added calendar screenshots, Slack threads, time-stamped email headers, and even recorded a screen capture of the triggerless build script being pushed live. No commentary, just silence and code. Then I wrote one line at the top. Ignored warnings are just future regrets wearing camouflage. At 3:01 p.m., I watched as the company-wide Slack channel lit up with deployment celebration gifts. The same 3 people who hadn't looked at a single line of my analysis were clapping like they'd split the atom. Brett posted a photo of himself holding a whiskey tumbler with the caption, "Smoothest launch all year. Teamwork. Paranoia." That word again. Paranoia. Like caution was a character flaw. Like testing was a mental illness. I shut my laptop, not gently. Somewhere in the server rack behind me, a tiny LED blinked in rhythm with my pulse. My manual trigger script, still dormant, still invisible, but not forever. The badge scanner blinked red, not yellow, not error, but red, as in access denied, as in you no longer exist here. I stood frozen at the turnstile, holding my coffee in one hand, the strap of my laptop bag in the other. The security guard, fresh out of college and sheepish as hell, looked up from his phone like I'd just interrupted his Spotify playlist. Hey, Nora, you might want to check with HR. It wasn't even 9:00 a.m. I took the long walk down the polished hallway in a daze, my sneakers muffled on the overly vacuumed carpet, passing 2 interns laughing over someone's dog meme in Slack. The hallway smelled like microwaved coconut oatmeal and regret. At the end of it, HR. The lights were on in the room, just the glow of a laptop and a sad little potted plant drooping like it knew what was coming. The HR rep, a woman named Kay with positive energy tattooed across her eyebrows, barely made eye contact. Hey, Nora, so we're doing a bit of restructuring, and unfortunately, today is your last day with the company. This is your exit packet, and we've already begun the deactivation process. Deactivation process? Like I was a subscription. No one mentioned this in yesterday's stand-up, I said. My voice didn't shake. It didn't even rise. It was just tired. Oh, that was finalized last night, Kay chirped, sliding the manila envelope across the desk like it was a party favor. We're prioritizing agility and cross-functional autonomy moving forward. Words that meant nothing. Buzzword soup. I opened the envelope. Severance check, NDA, standard boilerplate. I could practically recite it from memory. Can I at least go to my desk? Actually, security's already boxed up your things. You'll find them at the front desk. It was in that moment I felt my dignity peeling off like sunburnt skin. They hadn't even given me a chance to delete my cookies. As I turned to leave, the door opened behind me. Brett, of course, wearing sneakers that cost more than my rent and sipping from a protein shake like it held the secrets to immortality. He gave me a nod, casual as you please. Hey, Nora, nothing personal. You're just a technician, and the system basically runs itself now. He said it like he was complimenting me, like being automated out of existence was something I should be proud of. I didn't speak, didn't spit, didn't scream. I just walked past him, every step echoing like a bullet casing. At the front desk, my belongings were in a sad cardboard box. No name, just a yellow sticky note that said, "Engineer terminated." I lifted the lid. Laptop charger, my backup SSD, a copy of the design of Everyday Things. And at the very bottom, folded like a forgotten napkin, my old sticky note from 2018. Trust no one. Test everything. I looked over my shoulder one last time. Through the glass wall of the creative room, I could see the new intern fumbling with the cloud console, installing a font utility I had deprecated months ago after discovering it clashed with our core asset logic. I'd flagged it, documented it, replaced it, and now they had brought it back like resurrecting a cursed tombstone. I walked out into the parking lot, the chilly New York air hitting my lungs like a slap. My phone buzzed once, probably a calendar reminder I'd forgotten to cancel. I didn't check it. I just got in my car, turned the ignition, and drove. No destination, no job, no badge. But somewhere under 3 layers of encryption and one obsolete server tag, my trigger script sat dormant, silent, and waiting. I parked my car at the edge of a state park, killed the engine, and tossed my phone into the glove box like it owed me money. No signal out here, no Slack pings, no meeting invites. Just the rustle of wind through trees, and the hum of distant crickets sounding like dial-up from another dimension. I hiked for an hour until the static of civilization melted off my skin, then set up camp by a cold creek and built a fire with mechanical precision. I'd done this before. After my dad died, after a brutal breakup, after layoffs that smelled like team optimization. Disappearing wasn't escape. It was calibration. Out here, the only system that needed managing was the one keeping me warm and fed. I didn't think about brand strategies or Brett or who was going to trip over my absence first. I thought about trout. I thought about silence. I thought about how pine needles sounded like code being erased from a whiteboard. While I boiled instant noodles over the flame, back in that hermetically sealed corporate campus, someone hit deploy to production. The build passed. The dashboard lit green. The Slack channel exploded with clapping gifs and hell yes, and a gif of a cat slapping a keyboard. The same people who never reviewed my documentation. The same people who thought redundancy was a personality flaw. Then, 14 minutes later, the green flickered. Then it went red. Every instance threw errors. Authentication tokens failed. Design files spun out like drunk Beyblades. Restore hooks were called, but nothing answered. In creative hell, they call it a blackout cascade. When one system crashes and drags all its cousins down with it, like digital dominoes, the rollback job launched and found 0 restore points. None, nada, flatlined. I didn't know it yet. I was making coffee in a battered metal percolator, watching steam curl into the forest like it was trying to warn someone. My tent flap moved gently in the breeze, peaceful, untouchable. But 25 miles south, back at HQ, chaos bled from every monitor. The brand management logs scrolled like a death rattle. The VP of brand strategy was unavailable for comment. The CTO was texting furiously under the boardroom table. Legal was on speakerphone arguing about data retention compliance. Marketing was scrubbing scheduled tweets about the seamless new platform experience. And in a dusty corner of the old Slack archive, a repo no one remembered I still had read-only access to, someone finally typed the right question. Does anyone know if Nora hard-coded the restore hook? 3 engineers replied with question marks. Another replied, check the legacy asset flow. She might have used a manual trigger. A fourth posted, where is that repo even stored? And then, silence. I sat by the fire, my coffee mug warming my hands. A hawk cried somewhere above the tree line. I didn't know they were looking for me yet, but I could feel it, somewhere deep in the part of my brain that mapped architecture like highways and code like prayer. I felt a glitch, like someone trying to pick a lock I'd welded shut. I smiled, just a little. Let them sweat. Monday morning detonated like a gas leak. The first person to cry wasn't from my department. It was someone in marketing when their analytics dashboard wouldn't load and their quarter-end report disappeared mid-presentation. Then it spread. Finance couldn't access the ledger. Product lost their staging. Customer support was completely blind. At 9:03 a.m., the CEO, normally a golf at 7, arrive at 10 kind of guy, sprinted barefoot down the hallway, half a tie flapping behind him, yelling, who the hell signed off on this update? Like he thought blame worked like a password reset. No one answered because no one could. Brett was working remotely from his lake house. Ellen was in damage control mode, trying to reconstruct a backup strategy that didn't exist anymore. And they were frantically clicking through internal Confluence pages hoping for an answer that wasn't already a 404 error. By 10:17 a.m., they realized no one on staff had full documentation on the legacy system. Not for the backup triggers, not for the rollback logic, not for the off-site restore sequence. There was a collective corporate shudder when someone mumbled, this was Nora's thing. And then the scavenger hunt began. HR was told to find any and all records related to Nora Haskins. They combed her onboarding file, scanned every NDA she ever signed, every exit doc she never acknowledged. Then, like some B-movie plot twist, they found it. Her emergency contact. Not a family member, not an old roommate, but a client, someone from a long sunsetted government contract who once told her, if you ever need an out, call me. I had listed them with a smirk, knowing no one would ever actually call. Until now. At 11:02 a.m., a call was placed, not to the emergency contact, but directly to my phone. The number scraped from my digital signature buried in old Slack exports. My phone, still buried under a week-old hoodie in the glove box of my Subaru, buzzed once. I didn't flinch. I was perched on a boulder, boots off, feet in a freezing creek, watching the reflection of clouds shift like code logic refactoring itself in real time. A trout darted past my ankle. I didn't move. The phone buzzed again, this time longer. I walked up the creek bank, water dripping from my calves, opened the glove box, and checked the caller ID. Caitlin, exec assistant to CEO. I stared at the screen, then hit the side button and watched it go dark. The trout made more sense than most of my ex-colleagues. I opened my thermos, poured lukewarm coffee, and sipped like I wasn't the most wanted person in 3 departments. Let them squirm. Let them call. Let them learn what happens when you fire the only person who ever treated failure like a crime scene. And somewhere, behind firewalls they didn't understand, the script still waited, locked, untouchable. Signed, N. Haskins. Route off. The call came at 7:06 a.m. on Tuesday, just as I was unzipping my tent and watching steam rise off the damp earth, like it was exhaling with me. This time, I answered, not because I felt generous, but because I knew the voice on the other end wouldn't be Brett or HR or some intern reading off a crisis protocol checklist. It was a man with a voice like scotch and stress, measured, heavy, afraid of its own echo. Nora, he said. No last name, no condescension. This is Alan. I sit on the board. I said nothing. I let the silence fill the air between us like wet cement. We're in a situation, he continued. Not going to insult your intelligence by summarizing it. Another pause. Good, I said evenly. I've reviewed the logs, he said. I know the restore trigger was manual. I know only you had access. I sipped my coffee. Sounds like a tough spot. He exhaled slow, unpracticed, like someone used to commanding yachts, not begging in flip-flops on a burning deck. What would it take, he asked carefully, for you to explain how to regain access? I walked away from my camp, stepped onto a ridge overlooking the valley below. My breath fogged the air like a watermark. Well, I said, I'm no longer employed. Yes, I'm aware, so this isn't a work call, I said. It's a consulting inquiry. Alan didn't argue, didn't pivot to corporate legalese, just said, We've already spoken with external counsel. I raised an eyebrow. Good, I said. Then they've probably told you I didn't breach any agreements. They did. You also know, I continued, that I warned you. I wrote tickets, sent emails, documented everything. I've seen the archive, he said quietly. I also saw who closed your ticket without reading it. I sat down on a mossy boulder and stretched my legs. Then I'd say we're past apologies. He didn't deny it. We're willing to compensate. I'm not interested in hush money. We're not offering that. I let that sit. Here's what I want, I said. I'll walk you through how to unlock the trigger once. Live, no screenshots, no documentation. You take notes. That's reasonable? It has to be with the full board present. I don't talk to underlings anymore. I can arrange that. And one more thing. Yes? When I'm done, you'll issue a formal press statement, acknowledging that the brand's original stability depended on my creative architecture. Full credit. Public, no edits. A long pause, just wind and silence. Then, understood. I smiled for the first time in 3 days. Then schedule the call, Mr. Ditt, I said. But do it soon. Every minute you're offline is another lawsuit waiting to hatch. And I ended the call just like that. Not begging, not explaining, no longer small. Just a former designer sitting on a hill drinking burnt coffee, watching the company that fired her scramble to rebuild a kingdom from ashes, one root key at a time. The video call launched at 3:00 p.m. sharp like a guillotine. 12 little rectangles blinked to life on my cracked iPad, propped up against a thermos on the motel desk. I'd showered, pulled my hair back, and worn a plain black t-shirt. No makeup, no apologies. The grainy wallpaper behind me made it look like I was calling in from a Cold War fallout shelter. Fitting. Top row, board members, pinstriped and pale. Bottom row, the CTO sweating through a collar he probably ironed twice. In the middle square, the CEO, pretending calm but blinking too often. And there, dead center, Brett, the human PowerPoint, arms crossed, jaw tight, probably praying the Wi-Fi cut out before I spoke. It didn't. Thanks for making time, I said, my voice low and flat, slicing through the corporate tension like piano wire. Let's begin. I shared my screen, opening the original Asset Flow version from January 2018. What you're looking at is the core restoration chain. The trigger point is here. I zoomed in, highlighting a node labeled Manual Trigger End Signature. This isn't just a name, it's a security flag. SHA 256, encrypted. My digital signature required to decrypt and launch the backup. If you'd read the onboarding docs I submitted in April of last year, you'd know this was designed after our finance cluster nearly got bricked by that BitLocker exploit. You remember that, right? A few heads nodded sheepishly. One board member cleared his throat like he was about to apologize, then wisely didn't. Brett leaned in. Well, look, I'm not sure that kind of system architecture was appropriately... I cut him off. You mean documented? He nodded, too eager. I smiled, ice cold. I opened a zipped archive from my desktop labeled Redundant Doc Backups. Here are the full logs, PDFs, annotated screenshots, time-stamped walkthroughs. I sent these to Ellen twice, and to you. I looked directly at Brett. On June 6th, you marked the email as read and never replied. I clicked again. Here's a Slack export showing you deleting my messages from the creative channel after I flagged the restore flow was being bypassed. More silence. Then came the fatal click. I opened the deployment log from the day the update was pushed. No backup call was made. No trigger activated. And your brilliant intern deployed a utility I deprecated 9 months ago because it wiped rollback pointers by default. I warned you. I submitted a ticket. You closed it in under 20 minutes. Status: not reproducible. The CEO leaned forward. Why? Why didn't anyone know this? I tilted my head. I did. You just didn't care until it broke. The board chair rubbed his temples. And this trigger, it only works with your authorization? Yes, because that was the point, to make sure it couldn't be misused. Can we regain access without you? No, but I'm here, and I'm talking, which is more than I owed you. Brett finally broke. This isn't fair. You're treating this like sabotage. I didn't sabotage anything, I said, calm as cyanide. I just let your confidence run unsupervised. The board fell into a thick, choking silence. Outside my window, a neon vacancy sign flickered. Inside, I watched them all squirm, men in suits, trying to process that the quiet woman they underpaid, overlooked, and discarded like tech debt, now held the only map out of the burning maze they built with their own smug hands. And I wasn't even done. The offer came 5 minutes after the call ended. A desperate follow-up email, this time from the CEO himself. The subject line was in all caps, as if that would somehow make it urgent enough to matter now. Let's talk about next steps. They didn't even try to hide the flattery. You're invaluable. This has opened our eyes. We'd love to have you back. Back, as if I just stepped out for a smoke break and hadn't been fired, erased, replaced with a glorified intern, and publicly humiliated by a guy who thought root access was a type of massage therapy. I didn't respond right away. I let them marinate. The next morning, they called. This time, the CEO's voice was syrupy with fear. We're prepared to reinstate your position, he said, with back pay, whatever you need. I laughed, a short, bright, genuine laugh. It startled him. I let the silence hang a beat too long. I don't want my job back, I said. That job's dead. I buried it when you let a protein shake and sneakers override 7 years of stability. Then what do you want? I didn't hesitate. Consultant status, triple rate, no meetings unless I call them, no edits to my architecture. I build the new system my way, with full creative control. You want stability? You get out of my way. He didn't argue. He was smart enough not to. And one more thing, I added. A public statement signed by the board, acknowledging my original system, that it worked until you broke it. You'll thank me by name. Another pause. Then, and Brett? Gone. I want confirmation in writing. I heard the CEO exhale like someone setting down a gun. You'll have it within the hour. And I did. 2 days later, I returned, not through the back door, not under escort, but through the front lobby, where the receptionist gave me a badge that didn't say designer this time. It said, Infrastructure Strategy Lead, External Consultant. The entire walk from the entrance to the executive floor was silent. People turned, whispered. A few actually stood. One of the newer designers gave me a salute like I was walking into battle. But there was no cube waiting, No terminal in a shared pod. No sad desk plant curled under bad lighting. Instead, a new meeting room, glass-walled, with frosted edges, the name glowing on the tablet outside the door. Nora Haskins. Session in progress. Inside, I opened my laptop, logged into the restored core, and saw my signature. Manual Trigger N. Signature. Sitting exactly where it always had been. Untouched. I didn't speak. I didn't smile. I just pulled up a terminal, typed a single command, and watched the systems breathe again. No drama, no applause, just the sound of a company exhaling through architecture it no longer deserved, but desperately needed. And when I finally stood to leave hours later, the building didn't feel like it owned me anymore. It felt like it owed me. This story is a brutal reminder that the quiet folks behind the scenes, the ones who don't boast in meetings or suck up to execs, often hold the keys to everything. You can't automate respect, and firing people without understanding what they actually do, that's not just careless, it's corporate suicide. Value the people who build and maintain the foundation, because without a strong foundation, the most beautiful building will eventually crumble. You are the real stars of the corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, or I'll flick the switch on your old cubicle memories.